I cannot emphasize enough how grateful I am that you have not scrolled past this video yet. Thank you for staying here and thank you for listening. I pray that you stay on and give me a chance because that means a lot to me. It's encouraging when I am able to share God's word and I know that someone is listening and God is doing what He would do in your lives. So thank you. Now, I hope you have watched the introduction to this series in episode 1. And so in episode 2, which begins right now, I am going to really just try to delve into the message of the story. We are talking about my journey to the island, and I want to unpack what it felt like. In I may not have enough time to say everything, but I want to unpack scenes and clips from my childhood through my youth to my humble beginnings in my marriage and early family experiences and the church experiences, and let's just take a look at what God has been doing and what God has been showing me all along before I got caught up in the drama. Now, before again we begin, I want to say that I am really humbled by your feedback, so keep it coming. Please keep talking to me in the comments. Let me know what the message is doing to you. Let me know what you feel about this production. I just started, and so I'm gonna beg you to really bear with me if this quality is still not there yet, but we have to start from somewhere, and definitely with your support and with God's grace, this production is going to get better and better and better. And I am just coming back to ministry, so I believe that God is also just going to teach me and help me and improve me even as I share the message. So I'm gonna ask you not to give up on this program. Stay with me and keep following the journey and keep hearing what God has to say. Thank you. So when I launched the introduction to the series, The Fall of the Ego and the Rise of God, I got a comment that really got my attention, and this particular person was saying that their partner was in the position I was in. The journey of rebellion and such, and this person is saying that their partner was in that journey and they really followed me, and they enjoyed connecting with me on social media while they were in that journey. But now that I took a different turn and I decided to rebuild my life away from the chaos, they got upset and they blocked me. So they are no longer following me on the platforms. And I just want to respond to that and say to whoever is going through that's a good thing. That's a very good thing that she is blocking me from this part of her journey, or blocking such a message, because you cannot interrupt someone's rebellion, and their rebellion is usually full of very brave questions. Very brave questions. They are asking God and they are asking themselves, and they are asking about the meaning of life and the meaning of everything, and their answers they are settling for. But the journey with God is such a personal journey that if you could block everyone out, if you could mute every other voice and sit still, then yes, you have a high possibility of connecting with the divine possibilities and finding divine answers in ways that no religion, no belief system, no seminar, no book, no author, no podcast, in ways that they cannot deliver. If you are able to mute the noises, if you are able to shut out the noises, and sometimes those noises are coming from well-meaning people. They're coming from people who are trying to save you. But it becomes complicated because once you start asking God very personal questions, no one can save you from that. No one can save you from that. You have to be brave enough and go for your answers from God, and also be willing to listen to what God is teaching other people, because there's a reason why some of us had to go through what we had to go through in order to be a light to someone. So I pray that you are open enough to hear the nudging, because really that's what happened to me. That as I went through intense rebellion and resistance and hatred and anger against God, I got still to interact with a lot of sources of the voice of God in so many people. And there are those people who came to me, with a direct religious disposition, and I became very adverse to that. There are those people I interacted with, and they didn't even know that they were shining God's light to me in a certain way. In all sorts of circumstances. I can tell you almost every day in every circumstance how I had God in a certain experience. And that has allowed me to look back. The life that I hated, the life that I really was trying to reinvent myself out of, I have learned to look back from the humble beginnings of my ministry and my marriage, and I have seen that the same thing has been happening, that God has been speaking and God has been working and God has been doing something. So it's a good thing if someone in the part of their journey, they are able to plug out of every other voice. It's okay. Their path has chosen them, and the best you can do, and I think this is really what drew my heart back to God. I think the best you can do is trust God that you never ever run out of compassion for someone who is going through their rebellion. I'm going to repeat that. Trust God that you should never ever run out of compassion for someone who is genuinely crashing under the weight of rebellion. Because the truth is this, that we are all sort of going through some tough questioning moments, especially about God. And we are all finding our ways of settling into whatever beliefs and answers and into whatever conclusions or quests or whatever we want to explore. Everyone is just doing their thing at a very personal level, that even if you are part of a religious system, there's a part of it that you are experiencing with God, either in a lot of conflict or in a lot of enlightenment, or a mix of everything in a way that no one else is experiencing. So may you never run out of compassion for them as they crash under the weight of that, as they try to figure out, because compassion is a very strong language of who God is. God is love. And compassion is a very strong language of who God is. Because again, when they are going through their rebellion, they are destroying themselves in ways they don't know. And if you love them, then you want to pray that they're just going to live long enough to go through whatever they're going through and come out better and alive. You pray that it does not destroy them. You pray that it does not wring their soul away from God in a way that they cannot come back. So you pray that they get to go through whatever they're going through and come out victorious. And the best way to fuel them to go through it is to show them love and compassion. And then let God do the rest. God can do little is much. When you can just share a little compassion, God can do a lot with it. So be encouraged. It's not a bad thing. In my journey, as I look back, there's a story I told, and I've been telling it for the past 3 years. The story of my marriage and how it crumbled, and what I felt really didn't go well. I have told that story, and I have told about my suffering in my marriage. I've told about the sufferings I've gone through even after. And I realized that there's no way of coming out of this suffering apart from changing my story. I realized that there's no other way of getting out of what I called the trauma of my childhood, the trauma in my marriage, the church trauma, the post-divorce trauma, all the drama that I have gone through, all the mental drama that I have been caught up in, that has driven me to suicidal levels of anxiety, driven me to depression, incapacitated me, almost killed my productivity to zero on the ground, almost killed my confidence to zero on the ground. The pain I have suffered from these experiences can only change if I change my story. And that was my turning point. And that is what made me turn to God. The pain I was getting, because I was feeling so disappointed by God. The pain I felt from what I felt was the betrayal from the Christian community. The pain I felt from the rejection and isolation that people subjected me to. The pain and suffering I carried from, the very intense conflicts in my marriage and the conflicts that followed during the separation and the divorce process. The wounds I feel I gathered, that narrative, I can only stop suffering from that pain or from those wounds if I give a chance to a different story. And I pray that whatever you're going through, you are going to be brave enough that you will be able to stop and take a stock and ask yourself, what story have I been telling myself through all this? What story have I been telling myself? How have I been interpreting this, and what does that interpretation do to me? So I decided that I want to tell that story again, and I am not going to say that whatever I said happened, it didn't happen. No. I'm not going to reverse the facts. I'm not going to counter my earlier story and say, oh, I was wrong, these are the real facts. No, I'm not changing, because I think I did a pretty good job at being very candid about how I felt and the experiences that led to that. But I'm not going back to that. What I'm saying is, I am stepping out of that story of pain and mess and betrayal and feeling like a victim and all that. I'm stepping out of it. I'm letting it be what it is. And then I'm choosing a different story, which was also going on through my marriage and through my past and even through all this drama. And that's the story I want to tell. And I want to sort of play back the tape to when I think when I grew up as a Christian boy, and I got involved in church ministry from a very early age. My parents ran a church. I mean, my family's house was practically a church. Both my parents were actively involved in ministry, and it was a very vibrant evangelical movement in the 80s and in the 90s. And so I have a very strong evangelical Pentecostal, strict conservative Christian upbringing, and also that allowed me to express myself in church at a very early age. And I remember experiences when I was a child that I there's a preacher who came. I think I was 6 or 7. There was a lady who came from the village and said, "Hey, you're going to be a preacher." She sort of made a prophetic proclamation over my life. So, and I remember that igniting something in me. So from childhood, I was, always in front of Sunday school and doing shit. I was really just expending myself in God's work from childhood. And I grew into it towards my teenage. I started taking very big responsibilities in church. I was a youth leader. I was a very dedicated choir person. Yeah, I did church music ministry, worship ministry. I'm a very gifted scriptwriter, so I did playwriting and did productions with the church, and I did a lot of freelance lay evangelist duties. I started doing chaplaincy in high schools, like there were a couple of high schools like Maseno School, near girls, where for a long time I always just regularly went and shared God's word with the students on some sort of chaplaincy programs. And I did a lot of traveling all over the country and sometimes outside the country, doing gospel work, missionary work and all that. Now when I was getting married, my partner was also someone who was looking forward to connecting with someone who is really, really passionate about God's work. So I think that made it easy for both of us to make a decision, because I was in the form, I was in the part, I was in the spiritual spot that she was looking for. She was looking for a man of God. And I was really, really sold out and very, very focused on ministry and all sorts of ministry opportunities. And so we started from very humble beginnings. I mean, when we met, I think I was earning like 7,000 shillings. I had just started a job with a TV job with a Nation Media Group, and so I just had a contract where I would just make a few thousands a month. And then, I mean, the more I did that job, the more I presented the show, the more it grew, things improved. And so starting from the really humble beginnings, when both of us really didn't have much, I saw how we were able to raise our children. First, we raised our children without lack. We did not lack. We did not lack at any point. And I remember it worked almost like a conveyor belt, like an escalator. I remember every quarter from the first month of our marriage, I remember what our finances looked like, what our possessions looked like, what our capacity in terms of meeting our family needs and pursuing our dreams and, doing God's work. I remember how it felt like so little in those early days because we didn't have much. And I remember seeing God's grace like every quarter there was always a big leap. There was always a big leap in terms of God's providence to expand how much we were able to do, how much we were able to just enjoy family life with resources and serving God. And so I saw growth. I'm not going to lie to you. I saw growth. It's like every quarter there was always a leap. I mean, my contract started improving. Apart from my contract improving, I started some very brave entrepreneurship projects. I started an energy project, which I think I lost excitement about. And I decided, because God really gifted me with communications and media, I quickly ventured into media entrepreneurship and started really small, and I saw it blowing up really quickly and gradually and bigger. And when I started getting my contracts and I was now in two companies which were really doing exciting things in the communications field in this country. Things really started improving, and generally as a family a lot of doors were opening, and I saw how that was happening gradually. And so I saw the transition moving from when we were able to be sold out and do much with very little, and I saw it growing. I saw the kind of energy that required that level of success. I kind of saw, I look back and I see, I mean, forget about the drama. I look back and I see why it was working. And I see why it stopped working. I'll tell you why it was working. We were in a space where I was genuinely expending myself and my focus towards the work of God. And God was providing. I was not making any money from my missionary work or from my ministry work. I was not making anything. Instead, I was pouring into it. I was pouring into it. We, as a family, we were always investing a lot in missionary work, in supporting families, in supporting friends, in supporting mission projects, and even in us going out to different parts of the country and sometimes out of the country to just go and serve God and do missionary work. I saw like almost half my income was going into a very vibrant missionary work for, there was family life, children's ministries, youth ministries, music ministries, marriage and couples ministries. Oh man, it was a very, very vibrant season of service, and it's like half my resources were going in that direction. And then at some point, and then I realized half my resources were going into the direction of serving God, and God was bringing double on this other side to make sure we had a life. So we did not lack, and we were growing exponentially. I mean, coming from peasants, but within the third year, I mean, we had enough resources to do God's work, and even to invest more. I think at some point we were having like 3 cars as a family, and it was just getting better. Buying property, we bought a lot of property, and we have let go some of that property to even do God's work. So I saw the providence that came, and I begin to see why it was working. It was working because there was a strong commitment towards God. And number two, it was working because we had a high level of loyalty. So lesson number one is God was first. When God was first, our mission projects and our other expansion projects were also growing very well. So number two is there was a strong level of loyalty. We enjoyed a strong level of loyalty to one another, and from the early days, regardless of the challenges that came, I think we both put in a lot of work to remain loyal, and that didn't stop what went wrong from going wrong. But again, whatever went wrong doesn't stop me from seeing what was also going on right. So there was a very strong level of loyalty, and I am the one who, in a strong way, compromised that level of loyalty we were enjoying. So before that kind of loyalty towards each other was compromised, it was going on very well. So if you ask me what I think about marriage now, I think marriage can really work if the couples prioritize their spiritual health. That's one thing I've noticed. If you as a couple prioritize your spiritual health, and when God is your priority, the Bible says, where your treasure is, there your heart shall also be. So if God is priority, if God is your treasure, then you really are going to put your treasure in there. You're going to invest your time, your energy, your resources. One way or the other, you're going to support what God is doing. And maybe you don't have to do it as, maybe you don't even have to do the same thing, but you have to come to an agreement that as part of your life as a family, there is room to do God's work. There's room to do God's work, and you can, at a very personal level, try and feel what it is that God is asking you to do together as a family. And God could be even giving you so many ideas, so don't turn it into a point of conflict. None of you is wrong, none of you is better than the other. I think God can use all your gifts in different ways to attract so many missionary opportunities, because I saw how wide we were spread, and people who knew my family will tell you this is the truth. They saw how wide we were spread doing God's work, whether it is schools, youth, music, children, families, marriage, name it. I mean, we were so really outspread, and both of us would always respond to an opportunity. I would be like, I think God would want us to supply that group with some reading, some Bible study material, and then we would trust God, and those resources would come through, and we would go and distribute Bible study material. And maybe next time she would feel, I think God wants us to educate a child, and we would take projects of educating young people and being responsible for their fees. So it was very many expressions of gifts. So don't see that when the ideas are so many, don't turn it into conflict. All of them can be realized if you work together, and if God is, and God will provide for all of them. So do not let the fact that you have different passions turn into why you are fighting. I think I learned that different expressions, different gifts, different passions can really be like a strong explosive force for serving God as a family. And the number two, like I said, being loyal to each other is uncompromisable. Why? Because as a man, I'll speak as a man, what my experience has taught me. I think I've learned this from experience. I see it in how it worked in my marriage. I think women really reward loyalty more than love. I think women reward loyalty more than love, and this is what I mean. Giving your partner loyalty makes them feel so safe that they do not hold back, and it is easy for you to get the best of a woman if you're loyal. Compromising the loyalty introduces a strong sense of insecurity that she will be fighting for herself more than she's fighting for you as a couple. And that's just the way it is. So I saw that when we had loyalty, I saw how sold out we were, and I saw how beautiful the results were. I saw also what worked beautifully is if you not only are loyal to each other, but if you actually agree to work things together. Two cannot work together until they agree. I saw the times when we agreed on parenting. I saw the projects we agreed about. I saw the opportunities we agreed about. I saw what that did, and the outcomes were always beautiful. And even when the outcomes were disappointing, it did not tear us apart. So I think it's important to emphasize on agreement. It's to emphasize on support, some sort of positive unity. You've got to know that your partner has your back, and your partner has got to know that you have their back, and genuinely so. So I look back and I see when we genuinely had each other's back, I saw how the outcome was beautiful. Until when that stopped. And so I think all along, God has been teaching me these really important elements of marriage and family life. And if God is going to give any of us an opportunity to do marriage again, if God is going to give any of us an opportunity to do life again, I think it's important that we take into serious consideration the lessons that God is putting out right here. Now, I will have an opportunity to talk much more about the things that were working, which I really am grateful for, and there are so many. I mean, they'll keep coming as we are talking. But I saw how that moved, and I had a particular understanding or a particular interpretation of who God is that I think now started ruining this story. Because while I was doing all that, I thought that God loved me because of that much I was putting into the relationship. I thought that my relationship with God depended on that level of investment of my time, my energy, my resources, my family experiences and all that, I thought that my relationship with God depended on that. And when I started having experiences, especially in my marriage, that felt that they were not affirming me in those acts, or I felt like they were not giving me the kind of scores I want to feel like I have. This is the score I have with God, and so because I've done so much, I've served God so much, I think I really expect a really good score with Him. I didn't have tolerance to hear people who would give me a lower score. So